question, thank you. Your administration has laid out 4 different dates by which you've said that. The debt ceiling must be raised or the US would face potential dire consequences. Three of those dates have come and gone and we haven't faced financial calamity. Some of your critics have argued that these are then scare tactics to force a deal. So why should the American people believe that the August 2nd deadline is the final deadline by which a deal must be raised? And would you also spell out for us what you believe will happen if the debt ceiling is not raised by that date? President Obama, Jessica, let's be clear. We haven't given out 4 different dates. We have given out dates that are markers for us getting into trouble. It's the equivalent of you're driving down the street and the yellow light starts flashing. The yellow light is flashing. Now. It hasn't been a red light yet. So what Tim Geithner has said is, technically speaking, we're in a position now where we're having to do a whole bunch of things to make sure that our bills are paid. By August 2nd, we run out of tools to make sure that all our bills are paid. So that is a hard deadline. And I want everybody to understand that this is a jobs issue. This is not an abstraction. If the United States government, for the first time, cannot pay its bills, if it defaults, then the consequences for the US economy will be significant and unpredictable. And that is not a good thing. We don't know how capital markets will react. But if capital markets suddenly decide, you know what, the US government doesn't pay its bills. So we're going to start pulling our money out. And the US Treasury has to start to raise interest rates in order to attract more money to pay off our bills. That means higher interest rates for businesses, that means higher interest rates for consumers. So all the headwinds that we're already experiencing in terms of the recovery will get worse. That's not my opinion. I think that's a consensus opinion. And that means that job growth will be further stymied. It will be further hampered, as a consequence of that decision. So that's point number one. Point number two, I want to address what I've been hearing from some quarters, which is, well, maybe this debt limit thing is not really that serious, we can just pay interest on the debt. This idea has been floating around in some Republican circles. This is the equivalent of me saying, you know what? I will choose to pay my mortgage, but I'm not going to pay my car note. Or I'm going to pay my car note but I'm not going to pay my student loan. Now, a lot of people in really tough situations are having to make those tough decisions. But for the US government to start picking and choosing like that is not going to inspire a lot of confidence. Moreover, which bills are we going to decide to pay? These guys have said, well, maybe we just pay the interest on for bondholders. So are we really going to start paying interest to Chinese who hold? treasuries, and we're not going to pay folks their social security checks? Or we're not going to pay to veterans for their disability checks? I mean, which bills, which obligations, are we going to say we don't have to pay? And last point I want to make about this. These are bills that Congress ran up. The money has been spent. The obligations have been made. So this isn't a situation. I think the American people have to understand this. This is not a situation where Congress is going to say, okay, we won't buy this car, or we won't take this vacation. They took the vacation. They bought the car. And now they're saying maybe we don't have to pay. Or we don't have to pay as fast as we said we were going to, or that's not how responsible families act. And we're the greatest nation on earth, and we can't act that way. So this is urgent and it needs to get settled. Question: so is August 2nd a yellow light or a red light? President Obama, I think people should think of look. I'm the President of the United States and I want to make sure that I am not engaging in scare tactics. And I've tried to be responsible and somewhat restrained so that folks don't get spooked. August 2nd is a very important date. And there's no reason why we can't get this done now. We know what the options are out there. This is not a technical problem any longer. This is a matter of Congress going ahead and biting the bullet and making some tough decisions. Because we know what the decisions are. We've identified what spending cuts are possible. We've identified what defense cuts are possible. We've identified what healthcare cuts are possible. We've identified what loopholes in the tax code can be closed that would also raise revenue. We've identified what the options are. And the question now is, are we going to step up and get this done? And, you know, Malia and Sasha generally finish their homework a day ahead of time. Malia is 13, Sasha is 10. Question, impressive. President Obama, it is impressive. They don't wait until the night before. They're not pulling. All-nighters. They're 13 and 10. Congress can do the same thing. If you know you've got to do something, just do it. And I've got to say, I'm very amused when I start hearing comments about well, the president needs to show more leadership on this. Let me tell you something. Right after we finish dealing with the government shutdown, averting a government shutdown, I called the leaders here together. I said, we've got to get this done. I put Vice President Biden in charge of a process that, by the way, has made real progress, but these guys have worked through all of these issues. I met with every single caucus for an hour to an hour and a half each, Republican senators. Democratic Senators, Republican House, Democratic House. I've met with the leaders multiple times. At a certain point, they need to do their job. And so, this thing, which is just not on the level, where we have meetings and discussions. And we're working through process, and when they decide they're not happy with the fact that at some point you've got to make a choice, they just all step back and say, well, you know, the president needs to get this done, they need to do their job. Now is the time to go ahead and make the tough choices. That's why they're called leaders. And I've already shown that I'm willing to make some decisions that are very tough and will give my base of voters further reason to give me a hard time. But it's got to be done. And so there's no point in procrastinating. There's no point in putting it off. We've got to get this done. And if by the end of this week, we have not seen substantial progress, then I think members of Congress need to understand we are going to start having to cancel things and stay here until we get it done. They're in 1 week, they're out 1 week. And then they're saying, Obama has got to step in. You need to be here. I've been here. I've been doing Afghanistan and bin Laden and the Greek crisis. You stay here. Let's get it done. All right. I think you know my feelings about that. Karen Bohan. Question, thank you, Mr. President, you talked about the payroll tax holiday and possibly extending that. Are you worried, though, that by adding a discussion of short-term measures, on the economy into these discussions about long-term deficit reductions that may complicate the conversation and make it harder to pass a debt limit? President Obama, let me put it this way. If we've got a good deal on debt and deficit reduction that focuses not just on the 10-year window but also the long term, we will get it done. And then we can argue about some other things because I think that's very important. I will say that precisely because tough votes in Congress are often avoided. That it may make sense to also deal with something like a payroll tax cut at the same time because it does have budget implications, and the American people need to know that we're focused on jobs and not just on deficit reduction. Even though, as I said, deficit reduction helps to serve the job agenda. I think they want to have some confidence that we've got a plan that's helping right now. But I don't think it should be a complicating factor, because if Mitch McConnell and John Boehner came to me and said, "All right, we're ready to make a deal, here's a balanced approach to debt and deficit reduction," but we want to argue about payroll tax cuts later, they're not set to expire until the end of this year. If that was a situation that they presented, then I think we would have a serious conversation about that. I would not discount that completely. I do think that the steps that I talked about to deal with job growth, and economic growth right now are vitally important to deficit reduction. Just as deficit reduction is important to grow the economy and to create jobs well. Creating jobs and growing the economy also helps reduce the deficit. If we just increase the growth rate by 1 percentage point, that would drastically bring down the long-term projections of the deficit, because people are paying more into the coffers and fewer people are drawing unemployment insurance. It makes a huge difference.